Hello guys, this is your friend Itachi Fanfic 3.0 and we are back a new fanfic story which is, what if Ray had never lost his village? Would he still have found the strength to fight for others? Part 1. Let's start fanfic without wasting more time. The night carried no promise. It was a thin, empty thing that breathed through the trees, cool against the ashes of an old world. A single figure walked beneath it. Steps quiet, eyes open, the last threads of his village folded inside his mind. He had walked for so long that memory and road had begun to look the same. His name was Ray Kazuhara. No clan symbols marked his clothes anymore. The fabric had been patched with strips of gray, the color of things that had burned and cooled again. At his side moved a great wolf, Rai, silent as water. They did not speak. They did not need to. Ray carried the scent of smoke wherever he went. Sometimes it came from the villages still burning after the wars, sometimes only from his dreams. He would wake to find his hand trembling, fingers closing around the hilt of a weapon that was not there, and Rai watching him with eyes that held the calm of an older creature. Once, long ago, there had been 7 of them, a team trained beneath the banners of the Hidden Leaf. They had called themselves the Wind Guardians, young and bright and foolish enough to believe the wind could protect anything. Now only Ray remained, the last wind still moving through the ruins. He walked until dawn softened the forest. Mist lifted like breath from the ground. Birds returned to the branches, but their songs meant nothing to him. He had learned to listen instead for the rhythm of footsteps, the pattern of danger. Peace sounded too much like an ambush. By midday he reached the broken bridge that once crossed the river Tano. Half of it had fallen away, swallowed by the current. He stood at the edge and looked down at his reflection. The water showed a stranger. Eyes lined with shadows, hair streaked with the pale silver of exhaustion. Rai leaned forward, lapped at the surface once, then looked up as if to say, "We go on." Ray nodded. Across the river lay the borderlands, a place where maps forgot to breathe. Rumors said old jutsu slept there, sealed beneath the earth by shinobi who had feared their own creations. Ray had been following those rumors for months. He believed one of the seals belonged to the man who had destroyed his village. The first settlement he reached was little more than a skeleton of houses. A few survivors watched him from the shadows, faces marked by hunger and suspicion. They saw the headband at his waist, its leaf symbol scratched through, and turned away. He bought dried meat with the last of his coin, shared it with Rai, and left before dusk. The road beyond wound upward into mountains where the wind never rested. That night, beneath a sky streaked with thin clouds, he began to write in his notebook. Every page carried a name, a date, a memory, people he had failed to save. He did not write to remember. He wrote to measure the distance between who he had been and what he had become. When the list ended, he stared at the blank space waiting below it. He wondered whose name would fill it next. Rai stirred, ears lifting. Ray closed the notebook and rose. The wolf's body tensed, muscles moving beneath the fur-like waves. Someone was near. From between the rocks stepped a woman clothed in the dark robes of the mist. Her hands were empty, but the way she moved told him she could kill before air reached her fingers. Her eyes carried no hatred, only recognition. "Ray Kazuhara," she said. Her voice was calm, almost kind. "You survived." He studied her face, searching for the ghost of the girl he had once trained beside. "Mako," he said at last. The name tasted of ash. They stood facing each other while the wind moved their cloaks. Between them, Rai waited, head lowered, uncertain whether this meeting meant blood or mercy. Mako spoke first. "The mist has changed. The war is over." Her words drifted like cold rain. "Come back with me. There are people who remember you still." Ray shook his head. "The war isn't over. It only forgot to end." She stepped closer. "There is nothing left for you out here." He looked past her toward the horizon where thunder gathered over the peaks. There is, he said. There's the truth. Mako's shoulders lowered, a sign of surrender or sorrow, he could not tell. I heard what happened, she said quietly. They used forbidden fire techniques. None of us were meant to know them. I'm sorry. He wanted to believe her, but sorrow was a luxury he could no longer afford. I don't need apologies. I need names. Her gaze met his, steady. You wouldn't survive them. He turned away. Then I'll die knowing. When he walked past her, she did not follow. Only her voice reached him once more, carried by the wind. If you find him, tell him I remember the bridge. He did not look back. The climb into the mountains took 3 days. Snow replaced soil. Silence replaced sound. Ray's paws left deep prints that froze within minutes. They moved together through white endlessness, two shapes carved from persistence. At the summit stood an old monastery built into the rock. Its doors hung open, and within burned a single lantern, the flame refusing to die though no one tended it. Ray stepped inside. The walls were carved with symbols older than the villages, circles of moon and wolf, man and beast entwined. He ran his hand along the carvings. Power pulsed beneath them, faint but steady. He could feel the same rhythm that beat in Ray's chest when the wolf slept. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel awe. At the center of the hall lay a stone tablet half buried in snow. Words were etched across it in the old tongue of the Wind clans. To walk with the beast is to know yourself. To cage it is to vanish. Ray knelt before it. He remembered his father's lessons, that every shinobi carried an inner animal, a wildness that could protect or destroy. He had spent years trying to bury his. Now he wondered if that burial had been the true cause of his loss. Rai approached, pressed his head against Ray's shoulder. A warmth spread through him, quiet and certain. He whispered, "We were meant to fight together, not against what we are." The wolf's tail thumped once. That night he meditated beside the ancient flame. The air trembled around him, filled with unseen currents. He felt his chakra move in slow circles, merging with the rhythm of the place, the breath of the mountain, the silent heart of his companion. He did not seek control, he sought understanding. Visions came. Flashes of his childhood, his mother's laughter, the day Rai had appeared for the first time as a silver cub under the rain. Then the vision shifted. He saw fire devouring the village, faces screaming without sound. At the center stood a man whose eyes burned blue, not red, a color of cold vengeance. Ray reached toward him, but the image shattered into smoke. When he woke, dawn had come. He knew the face he had seen. The man was Daigo Soren, once a hidden mist commander, now a mercenary rumored to sell forbidden jutsu to the highest bidder. Ray had his name. He had his path. They descended from the mountains by another route, one that led toward the coastal plains. There the air grew thick with salt and heat. Villages dotted the shoreline, small and quiet. Ray spoke to fishermen, to traders, to wandering monks. Each carried a fragment of the story he needed. Daigo had been seen near the ruins of Shiura, an old fortress drowned halfway by the sea. The road to Shiura was lined with salt-bleached stones. Every few miles they passed memorials left by travelers, tokens of loss, ribbons tied to posts, names carved in driftwood. Ray added none of his own. He had learned that remembering was a wound that never closed. When they reached the cliffs, the fortress appeared from the mist like the spine of a beast. Half of it stood above water, half lay broken beneath the waves. Seagulls circled overhead, their wings black against the gray. Ray felt the old pull of battle in his veins. Rai felt it too. His hackles rose, eyes narrowing toward the movement among the stones below. Figures waited there. Not enemies yet, but guards of someone powerful enough to keep such company. Ray tightened the wraps around his arms, adjusted the sword on his back. He drew a long breath. Ready? He asked softly. Ray's low growl was his answer. They started down the path. The path wound downward through shale and fog. The stone underfoot broke easily, carrying small echoes that seemed to belong to another age. Far below, the ruined fortress waited, half swallowed by the sea. Each step smelled of rust and salt. Ray felt the mountain's silence give way to the murmur of waves. The world seemed to hold its breath. He reached the base of the cliffs as the tide began to turn. Pools of trapped seawater shimmered like fragments of mirrors, showing his face in pieces. He crossed them one by one, careful not to disturb the calm surface. Rai moved beside him, paws leaving no print. The gate of Shiura fortress had fallen long ago. Beyond it, corridors opened into darkness. The stone walls were veined with coral, seaweed clung to the corners like forgotten banners. Ray entered, his body remembering how to move when every shadow might strike. He did not quicken his pace. Patience was the truest form of strength left to him. He found what he was searching for in the central hall. Torches recently burned, the faint scent of iron oil, the scattered footprints of armed men. Someone was here. The walls breathed with a quiet tension. Ray's ears flicked, his gaze fixed on an archway where the air shifted slightly. Ray stepped forward. The shape that emerged was a man in heavy armor scarred by time. His hair was white at the edges, though his body carried the weight of surviving too many wars. The blue light in his eyes was unmistakable. Daigo Soren. The meeting needed no words at first. Recognition itself was heavier than language. Ray had imagined this face every night since the fire. Now that it stood before him, he felt neither victory nor rage, only the hollow certainty that nothing he did could rebuild what had burned. Daigo spoke first, voice measured, almost curious. You walk with a spirit beast. The leaf must have grown desperate to send such a thing. Ray's answer came like wind over stone. No one sent me. Daigo studied him. Then you have come to die. Not yet, Ray said. He moved, not with anger but precision. His blade traced a silver arc through the dim light. The air bent. The sea roared somewhere beyond the walls. Daigo met him, movements slow but absolute. Each exchange wrote a short sentence of violence across the ruins. Sparks fell, hissed, died. Rai circled them, waiting for the single opening that would end the struggle. But Daigo's chakra unfolded in waves, blue and cold, pushing the wolf back. The ground split. Water surged upward through the cracks. The fortress groaned under the weight of power older than its stones. Ray felt the tide of it break against his own body. He could taste the metallic edge of his limits. For a moment he remembered Mako's voice telling him that revenge would not bring peace. Then he remembered his family's faces, and the memory steadied his hands. He gathered every fragment of his will and released it in silence. The air around him thickened. Rai leapt, a streak of silver cutting through blue flame. The collision threw both man and wolf across the hall. When Ray rose again, Daigo was already stepping through the water toward him. You fight with a spirit's heart, Daigo said, almost admiring. But hearts are easy to break. Ray answered by lowering his sword until its tip touched the water. The ripples spread outward, circling both of them. He whispered something too quiet to be words. The symbols that had lain dormant on his arms ignited, pale gold against the gloom. Ray's body shimmered, outlines blurring into light. For a breath they were one shape, one pulse. Daigo hesitated. So that legend was true. The joining of man and beast did not make Ray stronger, it made him whole. The boundary between thought and instinct dissolved. The strike that followed was simple, inevitable. The blue light of Daigo's chakra shattered like glass beneath the weight of something older, the quiet understanding between hunter and companion. When the silence returned, Daigo knelt amid the rising tide. His armor was broken, his breath thin. He looked up at Ray, eyes no longer cold. You found your truth, he said. What will you do with it? Ray did not answer. He watched as the water climbed the walls, washing away the blood. When Daigo's body slid beneath the surface, the blue light went with it. The sea closed, indifferent. He turned toward the doorway. Rai stood beside him again, separate but unchanged. Together they walked out into the wind. The fortress sank slowly behind them until only the highest stones showed above the tide. Dash dash dash. The road beyond Shira ran along the coast for miles. For the first time in years Ray felt no direction pulling him. The list in his notebook was complete. The emptiness that followed was not peace but something gentler, acceptance, perhaps. He understood that vengeance had been a language, not a destination. They traveled inland again, crossing fields where war had not yet reached. Farmers returned to their homes, children chased birds in the sunlight. Life, persistent and unaware of its own courage, surrounded him. He realized he could walk among them without hiding his face. When evening fell, he sat beneath a lone cedar tree. Rai lay beside him, head on his paws. The scent of grass and salt mixed in the wind. Ray opened his notebook, read the names once more, then closed it for the last time. He did not burn it. He simply set it on a stone and left it there, a small monument to the silence that had shaped him. He rose, looked toward the horizon where the mountains faded into mist. Somewhere beyond them lay the Leaf Village, still alive, still flawed, still home. He wondered if returning meant surrender or courage. The question itself felt like a beginning. Rai nudged his hand, urging him forward. Together they started walking, footprints dissolving into the tall grass until nothing remained but the rhythm of their steps and the steady breathing of the earth. The journey would not end there, but for now, this was enough. The night gathered around them again, not as an enemy but as a companion. Somewhere far away, a new wind began to rise, carrying with it the faintest echo of a wolf's howl that no one heard and everyone felt. The wind had long forgotten the names of those who once walked the path through the northern forests. The trees stood tall and silent, their leaves whispering to no one, their roots buried deep in forgotten soil. Somewhere beneath that eternal canopy, a man moved, slow, deliberate, his shadow stretching long in the fading light. His name was Ray, a name once spoken with pride in the hidden Leaf Village, now carried only by the wind. He was not old, not yet, but time had carved its marks upon his face, not with age, but with loss. There was something hollow in his eyes, like the reflection of a man who had seen too much and felt too little for too long. By his side walked a wolf, silver gray, silent as smoke. Rai, his only companion, his only truth. Ray and Rai, two beings bound not by blood, but by something deeper, grief, perhaps. Or fate. They had wandered together for years. No one remembered when their paths had first crossed, but the bond between them was older than memory itself. To Ray, the wolf was not merely an animal. It was the voice he never spoke, the rage he never showed, the loyalty he had forgotten how to trust. And to Rai, the man was not a master, but a mirror. The road before them led nowhere, and that was fine. Ray had stopped seeking destinations a long time ago. His journey was not about reaching, it was about escaping. Escaping the village he once called home. Escaping the faces that haunted him in the quiet hours. Escaping himself.